Today's episode is brought to you by the Helix. Now, we're all about cool, interesting things happening around New Jersey, and the Helix is easily one of the most interesting and anticipated projects in the state. For those who have not yet heard, the Health and Life Science Exchange, more widely known as the Helix, is a new 5-acre innovation district located in the heart of New Brunswick. Right across the street from the New Brunswick train station, down the street from Rutgers, and centrally located on the Northeast Corridor with easy access to New York City, Philly, Boston, and D.C. New Jersey has a long, rich history of innovation and invention, and the Helix is taking that heritage and supercharging it with over 1.5 million square feet of multifaceted, state-of-the-art environments supporting the gamut of health and life science organizations and professions. From startup footprints to major headquarters, independent research to comprehensive laboratory operations, the Helix is a game changer for innovation in New Jersey. Universities, startups, Fortune 500 companies, individual researchers, and numerous others are planning to call the Helix home, such as Rutgers Health, the New Jersey Innovation Hub, RWJ Barnabas Health, the New Jersey EDA, Hackensack Meridian Health, Atlantic Technology University of Ireland, Tel Aviv University, and others. The Helix is coming. Visit helixnj.com to learn more or follow the Helix on Instagram at helix.nj for ongoing news, updates, and small doses of Jersey pride.
Entrepreneurs and small business owners, are you feeling overwhelmed by lack of capital, growth challenges, or personal branding? You are not alone. UCS Advisors is here for you. We're professional capital raising advisors committed to helping you secure funding and grow your business. Are you ready to impress investors? Check your investor readiness with our free 45-second quiz at ucsquiz.com. We believe in you. Visit ucsquiz.com and start your success journey. And remember, always be willing to achieve your greatness.
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Greetings to the Garden State, powered by the New Jersey Lottery. We're here in New Brunswick, New Jersey today with Chris Paladino. Chris, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here.
Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me into your office, and hopefully we don't disturb everyone working. So sorry about that, but this is such a good spot with the background of, what is this, New Brunswick back here?
Yes.
Yeah, amazing, cool spot. We're going to get more into that. So we're here specifically to talk about the Helix project that's going on here in New Brunswick, which you're obviously spearheading. Let's do a kind of overarching, what is the Helix? And then we'll kind of get a little bit more into it as we kind of progress through the episode.
Well, the Helix is the Health and Life Science Exchange. The thought was, since over the last 4 to 5 years of building in New Brunswick a innovation district where we could bring together both academics, existing large corporations who do research and manufacture, but also to bring them into that environment, startups.
Yeah.
People who are starting up companies. It may be 2, 3, 4, first level of investment, but to put them in the same environment as academic researchers and large companies who do life science and technology research.
Yeah, which I think is really interesting. And when we first started talking about this project, I can't really think of off the top of my head, maybe one other one, but there aren't a lot of places like this in the state, really.
There's probably nowhere in the state like this.
Yeah.
This represents the largest investment in life science research in New Jersey history. Basically, about $800 million is going into the first phase of this project.
Yeah.
The Helix, when all said and done, probably will represent close to $2 billion worth of investment. But it is 250,000 square feet of academic translational research by Rutgers. It is the new home of the Rutgers Medical School. And then it is the New Jersey Innovation Hub, which is a rather large, about 160 to 170,000 square feet of laboratories, offices for the startup community.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting, and I'm definitely excited to talk more about it. But before we kind of progress, a lot of the stuff that we do on the show is kind of hospitality driven, a lot of nonprofits, other interesting people, and you're no schlub. Let's put that out there for everybody to know. It's not just some random guy to talk about a development project. But I do want to do a little bit of background on you, just so people listening know who you are and why you were able to kind of put this project together. So maybe kind of broad strokes, let's give us just a little bit of background on your history in the real estate world in New Jersey.
Well, I think the first fascinating part of it in my own life is that I've kind of returned to a place I grew up.
Okay.
So my first 22 years of life were in New Brunswick, one way or another. I was born here. My parents taught in the school system here. It's the 60s. You're starting to see, flight from cities, stores closing. It's no longer a shopping district. When I was a kid, this is where you went to church, went to the doctor, came to buy your shoes, and it quickly became in the latter part of the 60s. We're going through New Brunswick, lock the doors.
Yeah.
So then I went to college here. When I went to college, I remember going to orientation and them telling you at Rutgers that you shouldn't go past the railroad tracks. This is a very different place today than it was when I was 22 years old and left, never thinking I was coming back.
Right.
And had an interesting opportunity to come back to do this. And it's been part of the, real satisfying part of the journey is that we really have kind of changed a place where, I spent a lot of my earlier days, and it's different today. It's a lot of fun to go back to Rutgers, go back to see my fraternity brothers, other alumni who come back not so regularly.
Sure.
And then for them to see the difference.
Yeah.
So I was a lawyer. I went to practice law. Fortunately, one of my professors in law school became the governor of New Jersey, and I had the opportunity to go work for Governor Florio. Went and became the deputy director of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority at a ripe old age of 30 years old.
Wow.
And was, after Governor Florio lost, was about to go back to practice law, and George Zoffinger, who had been Jim Florio's Commerce Commissioner and had taken over the Kane Family Bank, had become Constellation Bank and moved to New Brunswick, said, hey, why don't we try to fix this thing, Devco? It's been dormant for a while. When I first looked at Devco, it had $100,000 in the bank and had $6 million of unsecured debt.
Yeah.
And I went back and told my wife, look, I'm going to do this for a year, and then I'll go get a real job.
Sure.
Recently, she asked me, was it ready time to get a real job yet? But today, we have $1.6 billion in the ground within 2 blocks.
Yeah.
So I think we have had a tremendous impact. We're close to $4 billion in investment, not just in New Brunswick, but in Atlantic City and in Newark.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit addictive. And what we really do focus on, and I think we do it rather well, is we do create real public-private partnerships. That's kind of, for a while, that was something that people talked about all the time.
Yeah.
But if you look at our projects, let them be, we don't build an office building. We don't build housing. We do a lot of mixed use. And when you see our partners in these projects, it's quite often one of the hospital systems. It's Rutgers. It's the medical school. And what we like to say is that they probably would not have done these projects by themselves. But what we focused on is, what are the goals of our partners? Let it be the mayor or the county, right, or the governor or the head of the hospital system or Rutgers. What are they trying to accomplish? What we usually find out is, if we kind of put them together, we're able to do something not just to fulfill their goals, but to make something pretty terrific.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about New Brunswick a little bit more, because you talked about that at the beginning, kind of how you grew up around this area and all that kind of stuff, and how, like, in the 60s it was, we're driving through New Brunswick, lock the doors. Like, you would probably know this better than me, but I feel like New Brunswick, when we talk about cities like that, kind of gets almost left out. Because obviously, when you drive through, you can look at the mural behind us. There's a lot of stuff going on here. But I feel like, back when I was going to a lot of real estate networking, panels and talking all about that kind of stuff, it was always Newark and places like that are kind of this is the place, that everyone left in the 60s and now it's kind of coming back. And I feel like New Brunswick sometimes doesn't get that same kind of love.
Well, it's interesting, because New Brunswick, being in the center of the state, being the home of Rutgers University, being the home of Johnson & Johnson, being on the Northeast Corridor, has always really been well positioned.
Yeah.
Fortunately, when other companies decided to leave urban New Jersey, Johnson & Johnson stayed. Rutgers continued to grow. The hospitals continued to grow. This is one of the few, probably except for Jersey City, one of the few urban areas that has continuously grown census over census. probably when I left New Brunswick, there were 40,000 people living here.
Yeah.
Today, there's 65,000 people who live here. More importantly, there's like 150,000 people a day come here to work or go to school.
Yeah.
This has always been, over time, the center of kind of cultural in central New Jersey. And when you have theaters, you have restaurants.
Sure.
So, I often said, well, we were in the middle of kind of doing this and through the later part of the 90s, New Brunswick is a much more exciting place on a Thursday night at 6 o'clock when people were coming here than at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Sure.
But today, there's probably 5,000 people who live within 4 blocks of where we are right now that did not live here in the early part of the 90s.
Yeah.
We were able to attract both, developers who wanted to do condominiums and rental units. And it was, we caught it at the right time.
Sure.
There was a reemergence of the cities. People wanted to be in cities again. People wanted to be around people. We're fortunate that Rutgers graduates 20,000 students a year, and then they realize and go out and get their first jobs. It's better to come here and rent an apartment and be in a place where they're kind of comfortable, and then an apartment complex out on a highway someplace.
Yeah.
Once they leave their parents' basement.
Yeah.
But also, we found where people who grew up here or who worked here, and in their empty nester years,
Sure.
found it to be interesting to kind of come back and have an apartment and be able to walk to work and, have an extra cocktail at night and not have to worry about it. We do have an interesting mix of people who have moved here. Plus, we have always been a place of new immigrant communities.
Yes.
The Irish and the Italians and the Germans, the Irish built the canal. It's always been that kind of transitional place. And today we have a thriving Latino community, not just from Mexico, but from Central America. You go down to French Street and there's probably 25 different restaurants of all different kind of cultures.
Yeah.
So it's always been an important part of New Brunswick reinventing itself.
Sure.
And in general, look, cities that don't reinvent themselves really don't move forward.
For sure.
And, this has been a place that has taken advantage of its location and some of the institutions that didn't leave.
Right. So we talked a little bit about your background, and maybe we could do specifically to New Brunswick. We don't have to if there's other ones that you've worked on around the state that you're proud of and want to talk about. But prior to the Helix, what are some of your, significant projects that you are proud of, maybe even just around this area?
Well, look, in New Brunswick, I think we have made some real significant contributions on a variety of different levels. The building of the Heldrich Hotel. The Heldrich Hotel, New Brunswick didn't have. It had the Hyatt, but it needed another hotel. We built a first-class conference center hotel that attracts something about 150,000 people a year to the city. I mean, that's in a place that's only 5 square miles and a downtown that's maybe 10 blocks. Bringing 150,000 people a year who spend a couple of days and go to restaurants is an important thing. We did the New Brunswick Performing Arts Center. We've always had a very viable and thriving arts community. But the George Street Playhouse, which is an equity theater, was in the old YMCA where I used to learn to swim. Before, when I was in college, it was in an old grocery store.
Right.
The Crossroads Theater, which was probably continues to be one of the more important African American theaters in America, and has won a Tony Award. They were in an old building down by Route 18. The ballet never had a real home. So what we did is we built the New Brunswick Performing Arts Center, 2 state-of-the-art theaters with 7 rehearsal spaces, a 450-seat theater, a 280-seat theater, and then we helped pay for that with 200 luxury apartments above it. And because all of our apartment buildings, we try to do a set-aside for affordable housing. And, when we first opened, we made a real effort to attract artists.
Sure.
So when the first occupants of that building who were taking advantage of the affordable housing units were poets, people who built stages, dancers, choreographers, people who were writers, and it really did start to give the community a 24/7 artistic component to it.
Yeah.
Probably the project that I find in a lot of people who work with us here, since so many of us went to Rutgers, was doing the College Avenue Redevelopment Project. We did about $450 million worth of development on the Rutgers campus. We built the first academic building since 1958. We built the Rutgers Honors College that has done extraordinary things for Rutgers and being able to attract some of the best and brightest in New Jersey and keeping them here and not going someplace else. And we also did the Yard. One of the things that I have always said is that Rutgers in New Brunswick lacked a sense of place. There was no specific place. So we took the old parking lot, which had been the place where Robert Wood Johnson was actually born.
Okay.
Had turned into a fraternity house. Fraternity house had gotten knocked down. It became famous for being the grease truck lots, where the grease trucks would park. They weren't trucks much anymore because they all had flat tires. And we built a housing for approximately 500 Rutgers students, 18,000 feet of retail. One of the truck owners actually opened up the first, bricks and mortar store. Starbucks, Crispy Pizza, Jersey Mike's, all the kind of places that students love to go. And built it around a park, put a 300-square-foot LED television set in the middle of it, and it is now an extraordinary active place. The Rutgers bus stop is there where 8,000 students a day come and go. But we have Sunday morning yoga, Wednesday nights movie nights, we have tango lessons. It's really created a sense of place for Rutgers.
Yeah.
So for me, who walked up and down College Avenue in 1978, and it was not inspiring, it is a much different place, and that gives a good sense of satisfaction.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with that. And I love to see kind of like, because we've been with the show, we've been all over the place. I mean, this is actually our first time in New Brunswick doing an episode, but we've been to Newark a few times. We've been to Atlantic City a couple times, Camden, like places that kind of like Jersey City, Hoboken, places that kind of are in varying stages of their life cycles and all that kind of stuff. It's just interesting to kind of see the path that they all take, and it's really interesting to kind of hear all the stuff that's going on here.
In Atlantic City, we have built a new campus for Stockton University.
Okay.
In a part of town where it was vacant parking lots. One of the things I like to say is that what we try to do is change the tempo of the city.
Yeah.
We've got walking up and down George Street today is a very different thing, where we have students living, we have people living there. It's Sunday morning. There's people out going to get bagels, going to get newspapers, doing those kind of things. If people still go get newspapers.
I saw two guys at the diner yesterday reading newspapers. So.
But in Atlantic City, we've now built housing for almost 1,000 Stockton students. We've built a classroom building. We built a new headquarters for South Jersey Gas, all in one intersection.
Yeah.
And so today, on any given 10 o'clock in the morning, there's 2,000 people coming and going to class, going to work. And that changes the dynamic of a city.
Absolutely.
A coffee shop opens, a sandwich shop opens. We've seen that in New Brunswick where, there's not vacant stores because there's people, there's customers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And one of the things, we've really tried to focus on when we do these things is that we're not just building buildings, we're helping build communities. And I think we've been relatively successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said that, because the community thing is definitely like the biggest part, especially when you start talking about a place like in Atlantic City, where, from the 70s, really, that kind of got taken away from a community like that. And then it's a matter of like bringing that back to those people. So before we take our break and we kind of get into like the Helix more specifically, we talked a lot about New Brunswick and your background and all the projects that you've worked on. And we're going to do like the lifespan of the Helix and some of the key players that are involved in it. But why is the Helix a good fit for New Brunswick?
Well, I think it begins and ends with the things that are that makes New Brunswick viable from the beginning. Location is important. It's smack in the middle of the state. It's within 15 or 20 miles of how many Fortune 500 companies in the life science business that have grown up in New Jersey. It's on the Northeast Corridor. We have, you can be in New York City in 35 minutes. You can be in Newark Airport in 20 minutes. We are getting expanded Amtrak service. So you're going to be able to be in Philadelphia under an hour. You'll be able to be in Washington, New York City, Boston. And then probably most importantly is that Rutgers is here. And Rutgers is one of the leading research universities, not only in the country, but in the world.
Yeah.
Over $1 billion of sponsored research a year. Rutgers has 2 medical schools. We have 2 teaching hospitals in New Brunswick. So a lot of, and then of course there's Johnson & Johnson.
Of course.
That is just, obviously an important part of the ethos, But the fact is that we have always been a place where there is new talent coming in, new talent that is being educated here. It's one of the things the reason that when we talk to people, and that are making decisions in corporations, the most important thing, and state incentives are important, it's property taxes, those things are important, but the ability to attract talent.
Yeah.
And New Jersey has more PhDs and engineers per capita than anywhere in the world. And Middlesex County is a big home to that, and it's such a diverse place. We've got a very large Southeast Asian community within 10 minutes from here.
Yeah.
We have a very, very large, well-educated workforce that is, we kind of grew up here, is around here. And I think that's what gives us the biggest leg up is that we have, extraordinary talent.
Yeah.
We are talking to a number of potential large tenants, established companies who are in technology, life science, and what we do talk about is their ability to recruit here.
Yeah.
Not just from Rutgers, but that young folks want to move and be in this environment. Probably the biggest mistakes that a lot of the life science companies made is they moved out onto the highways behind a gate. And, it didn't take much but to us visit places like Kendall Square, where scientists want to see each other.
Yeah.
They want to have coffee, they want to have a drink, they want to share ideas. The culture of innovation has changed in this generation, and it's much more collaborative. It's a lot less secret. You find people leaving large companies and starting their own projects, and they're not just young people. There's people who are in their 50s who their project gets shut down and they decide to take it off on their own.
Yeah.
And they want to be around like-minded folks.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to take our break.
Okay.
And we're going to get into kind of like the lifespan and the key players that we talked about and all that kind of stuff. So this is the Greens from the Garden State podcast powered by the New Jersey Lottery. I'm Mike Kim. We're here in New Brunswick, New Jersey with Chris Paladino. We'll be right back. The Unveil Performing Arts Center is the heart of arts and entertainment in Morristown, New Jersey. MPAC presents over 200 events annually and is home to an innovative children's arts education program. To see MPAC's upcoming schedule of world-class concerts, stand-up comedy, family shows, and more, head to mayoarts.org or just click the link in our show notes.
Want to give your guests something they'll talk about for years? OMG Tarot delivers spot-on tarot card readings that will make your next birthday party, holiday party, team lunch, or girls' night unforgettable. To learn more, visit omgtarot.com.
I wanted to tell you about the crew over at Make Cool Shit. These are the magicians who recently gave our podcast a jaw-dropping makeover and shares our same Garden State attitude. Whether you're a fresh-faced startup or a seasoned business looking to shake things up, it's all about making your brand sizzle. We're not just talking about design, we're talking about a partnership in creating awesomeness, and I can promise you they can make that happen. Plus, their unlimited Cool Shit design subscription is a game changer. Unlimited creativity, one flat monthly fee, and none of that boring stuff. It's like having your own design superheroes on speed dial. Check them out on Instagram at We Make Cool Shit or visit their website, wemakecoolshit.co. All right, we're back for our second segment of this episode of Greetings from the Garden State, powered by the New Jersey Lottery. We're here in New Brunswick, New Jersey with Chris Paladino. So in the first segment, we learned all about your background, the background at DevCo, a New Brunswick history as well, and then how why New Brunswick is a good fit for the Helix and vice versa. I mentioned in the first segment that Helix is the health and life science exchange. I got that right? Mm-hmm. Right? What does that kind of entail?
Look, I think when all is said and done, the important part of Helix is that things that are going to happen here are going to impact people's lives. And it's starting off with a very heavy life science component to it, a heavy research component to it, and that becomes therapies and medical devices and different types of treatments and medications and those types of things. But from a technology standpoint, it's where better place to put your startup company where you're talking about wearable devices. Where do you talk to other products that impact people's lives?
Yeah.
It may be a sneaker company that is able to provide you with all types of information. It might be a food science, a new organic food science type of company that decides to be here because it wants to be in that environment. I think the Helix, although it has the Health and Life Science Exchange, I think it's a great name because those are the health impacts all of us,
sure,
and it impacts all of us at so many different gradations. It's what you wear, it's what you eat, it's what you what kind of how you're treated, and I think to being able to put people together who are innovative and forward thinking, that we're going to attract a whole variety of different types of enterprises that all focus on making people's lives better.
So I do want to talk about, because we are here specifically to talk about the Helix, I do want to get obviously way more into that. So let's talk a little bit about the lifespan of a project like this, because obviously there's 3 buildings, right? There's 3 buildings that are part of this project. There's a lot that goes into that. So let's take it maybe from like the early infant stages of the Helix, and then we'll kind of work our way through the story up until where we are right now.
Well, it's interesting, and one of the things that makes New Brunswick work is we've had extraordinary, reliable political leadership. Mayor Cahill is the only mayor that I've known since I've been here. He's been the mayor for probably 30 years at this point. Very stable. Folks who work in the city could work anywhere. They're very, very sophisticated when it comes to economic development, worked with Glenn Patterson forever. Probably what made the Helix work is that the mayor had faith of us in the concept to allow us to tear down an existing parking garage and free up 4 acres in the center of downtown to do this.
Yeah.
And he really had to be a true believer because he let us tear down a parking garage. I tore down a parking garage that was built after I graduated college. So, it's not like it was something that was falling down and needed to be done, but it was an underutilized space. Back in the 80s and 90s, it made sense to build a parking garage next to a train station with the thought of being able to get people from the suburbs to park there to use the train station and maybe run across the street. Today, far more people, about 8,000 people use our train station every day. Far more people use it to come into town than to leave town.
Yeah.
So we started off with having, we spent money. We spent millions of dollars to tear this parking garage down, but we had a place. And it was much easier for people to start to believe in it and see it when it was no longer a big parking garage. The Helix in general goes back to some of my earliest conversations with Governor Murphy when he wasn't Governor Murphy, he was candidate Murphy, about his view of the innovation economy. Is that New Jersey, he kind of agreed that New Jersey had kind of lost its way. While we had all of these Fortune 100 pharmaceutical companies within 15 miles of New Brunswick, they had first left to do their manufacturing other places, but their research really had started to gravitate to places like the Research Triangle in North Carolina first, and then Kendall Square in Massachusetts. Why did they go there? You talk to somebody from Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson, they said, look, the smartest kids in the world were coming to Boston to go to school. We needed to grab them. We needed to give to if we wanted them to work for us, we needed to be able to be in a place where they were going to school. There's no reason the same thing didn't happen here.
Right.
So, in my initial conversations with the governor and through transition, where they were looking for a big idea, collectively with Tim Sullivan from the EDA and the governor's chief of staff and their policy people, we started to really focus on is what New Jersey needed was to recapture its spirit of innovation. Where companies start, they grow. They hire people, they raise more capital, they do public offering statements, they go public, but they don't really ever seem to gravitate further than 20 miles from where they were founded. So that was important. And, for us to appreciate that this is what, New Jersey was the home of Bell Labs, 20 Nobel Prize winners. New Brunswick, the Johnson brothers got off the train one day when the train was taking on water because it was a steam engine. They saw a old wallpaper factory available for rent. They rented it, and they started what became the world's largest healthcare consumer products company right here. And, just as a sidelight, they were very close with Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison used to come to New Brunswick to go to the opera. From Menlo Park. His wife was a big opera fan. She would take him into Fred Kilmer's pharmacy to kind of get his hair combed, and he became a friendship with Fred Kilmer. Fred Kilmer's son was Joyce Kilmer. And wrote the famous poem about trees, which finally got chopped down over on the Douglas campus. He introduced him to the Johnson brothers. Once a month, at his lunch counter, the Johnson brothers, Fred Kilmer, who became the first director of research at Johnson & Johnson, would sit down and talk about American innovation, manufacturing. The Dr. Waxman won a Nobel Prize at Rutgers, a couple blocks from here, developing erythromycin. We've got all kinds of pictures that I've seen of Albert Einstein coming to New Brunswick and doing work in the area. So this is something that's kind of in our DNA. And we just really wanted to find a kind of resurrect it. So the original thought was that we were going to build an incubator, and that would attract technology and life science startups, with the hope that they would catch on and grow. You have to realize that a lot of these companies don't make it past 3 months, 6 months, 8 months. But when one does, it becomes Biogen, and employs thousands of people and does important things. It was right. Rutgers was doing $1 billion worth of research. The Cancer Institute was growing and becoming important. So we went down the road and designed, and we're getting ready to do a groundbreaking on a building that was about 180,000 square feet. Would be the largest incubator project on the East Coast. It was not insignificant. We had visited, New Labs. We had invited Lab Central, all of the places in Kendall Square, in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, in Philadelphia, Pennovation. So we kind of understood how the mechanics of these things work. Associations with universities were important. And then the governor came out with its Fairer and Stronger economic plan that included a series of incentive programs that we thought we could take advantage of. And we sat down with Rutgers, who's probably one of our best partners in what we've done. And they said, look, how do we make a large translational research facility work? How do we bring the Rutgers Medical School downtown? Medical school education's changing dramatically. From your first and second year, where you used to just spend it in the classroom and in the labs, now you're actually in the clinical practices. So how do we make the medical school a much more important part of the dynamic in town? So we redesigned this building that became, 550,000 square feet, nearly $800 million, with the Rutgers Translational Research, the medical school, and the innovation hub, becoming the not just the key components, the components. We couldn't make the building any bigger. I mean, we turn people away every day who'd like to participate in that first building, and there's just no more space. So, we're underway. We're underway, and then as that rolled out, as this project became bigger, to try to make the economics of the innovation hub work, we kind of went in search of partners. And, we were able to put together the two largest healthcare systems in New Jersey, Hackensack Meridian Health and the Robert Wood Johnson Barnabas Health System as partners, Rutgers being a key partner, Princeton playing a role, and the New Jersey Economic Development Authority.
Yeah.
So when we open up, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority is going to land its Evergreen venture capital program, and this is where it's going to be located. Hackensack Meridian Health is most likely going to put some of its startup support that it does, and Robert Wood Johnson most likely will be doing a lot of its clinical trial work in this building.
Yeah.
So we'll have an environment of people that are of like mind, and look, we've kind of gone international. I've been with the governor in Israel and in Ireland. The University of Tel Aviv is now a partner with Rutgers, and I will be a partner in this project. All throughout COVID, they had a number of important research projects that they were doing across the ocean, and then Atlantic Technology Institute in Western Ireland. Ireland has a very large startup community in medical devices, and so we've created a relationship through Choose New Jersey.
Yep.
Who I know you've talked with, Wes, and they're going to locate 5 of their startups in this building from day one.
Yeah.
Part of it is for them to continue to be able to do research, but it's also to be able to do prototypes and work at the hospitals with doctors in this. And the other part is access to capital. They're 25 miles from Wall Street.
Yeah.
So this is a place that is going to really have that type of very different types of tenants. I don't think anybody's really a tenant. They're all partners of ours.
Yeah, right.
And the thought is you're going to have Rutgers has committed $250 million to recruit principal investigators. They're coming from Texas, from Switzerland, from California. They bring 6 to 10 people. They bring NIH funds. But what you want is to one of those researchers to be able to take something that's going, really from the bench to the bedside, and then to commercialize it. So hopefully what's going to happen is somebody's going to get a patent in a lab, then they're going to take it up to the innovation hub. They're going to do a startup there.
Yes.
If I had one conversation that kind of moved me of why this was important, and I continuously kind of go back to, if you just, even my own self, is I remember speaking to a young doctor researcher at the medical school, probably 8-9 years ago. And she said, I've got a lab here down, and she was doing diabetes research. She said, I've got a lab here downtown at Rutgers. I see patients in my clinic. I see patients in the hospital. But I also have a product that I'm trying to commercialize that I've acquired the license from, my research. And I have to go down Route 1 to some flex space in Dayton.
Right.
And I want to be able to go across the street and be able to do all of those things in one day, not have to get into my car.
Yeah.
And, realized of why proximity and putting people who, what we're really hoping it to is to kind of really create creative collisions.
Yeah.
Is that somebody's working on something, they're working on it on a whiteboard, they see somebody at lunch in the food hall we're building, they're talking about what they're doing, and they're saying, let me take a look.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times we'd be in Kendall Square and we'd walk into a place and you'd have your Goodwill Hunting moment, where there's a who knows what it is up on the wall, and there's people with markers, trying to work something out. For us to be able to put people not in just one city, not one institution, but in a building and in what is becoming a community, for them to be able to share ideas, our ability to be able to bring people in from the business school that actually becomes part of startups and marketing and those types. There'll be 1,600 people who work in this first building.
Yeah.
when we're done.
Yeah. I think it's super interesting, and I love all of that, because like one of the things when I first sat down with Wes when we did that episode with Choose, like I feel like I know enough about Jersey, but then I started talking to him a little bit more. He started learning about how, like, one of the most educated workforces in the country, as you said, like more PhDs and stuff per capita in the world. So that to me was super interesting. Not something that I knew initially. I did know that, the dollar here, like there's a lot of buying power with, people that live here. So we're talking about all these things, and obviously there's like a lot of juice, a lot of different organizations, different groups, different key partners that we just talked about with Rutgers and RWJ Barnabas and Hackensack Meridian. So if we're looking, let's take it down to kind of like the layman, right? Like a regular New Jerseyan, like why is it something that's important to somebody that is just like lives in Jersey and is just enjoys New Jersey?
I mean, two things. There are discoveries that are going to happen in this building that are going to make people's lives better. There are going to be, therapies that are developed. There's going to be medication that is developed. There's going to be a medical device that's going to improve people's lives.
Yeah.
And when you do it with two health systems that cover from pretty much from at least Trenton to the George Washington Bridge, we could impact a lot of lives. The second thing is we're creating a lot of job opportunities. We continuously have a brain drain. I think Rutgers has done an extraordinary job of keeping some of the best and brightest students, but now we have to create places for them to work.
Right.
We don't want them to leave to go to Massachusetts or to go to North Carolina or go to Maryland to work. So to be able to create opportunities for graduates at the undergraduate level, at the PhD level, for them to be able to do something exciting, important, and within their field, a couple blocks from where they went to school, they become an important part of the community, and then everything becomes stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely agree with that. And I also think it's interesting because as I was doing some research and going through the website and all that kind of stuff, we're talking about obviously like a huge amount of innovation that's going to happen here and all that kind of stuff. And obviously there's an impact on like just an average New Jersey resident. But there's also more to the project overall. Like there's residential space, there's some other spots.
So we're building a place.
Yeah.
We're building a neighborhood, we're building a district.
It's like a hub of like everything.
Yeah.
You can live there, work there, eat there.
We're working with a very large company right now who we hope brings about another 1,000 jobs of pure technology research to the site. We're also focusing on building support spaces for the law firms, the accounting firms, the consulting firms that want to be in this environment.
Right.
You go to Kendall Square and you see McKinsey and Deloitte and all of those folks who are there because these are their customers. It's also I think PwC did work for Amazon for free for 3 years.
Yeah.
And, it's their biggest client.
Right.
It's the new business development.
Yeah.
You want to be able to talk to the people who are starting companies. Lawyers, we've had several law firms that want to locate here. We've had accounting firms that want to locate here. And then we need a place for people to live.
Yeah.
So we're building about 250 apartments on the site. There'll be a set aside for affordable. The Borai organization right across the street is building, I think, 250 to 300 units of housing. I think our biggest problem is, where do we go next?
Yeah.
Where do we go next? And, I think we will become a feeder for other parts of New Jersey. The EDA has a large technology center on Route 1. So if a company needs to grow and all of a sudden needs 25,000, 30,000 square feet, we could get it to them very quickly.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of exciting things happening throughout the state that you never know of the synergy that might happen. Netflix is going to spend $1 billion at Fort Monmouth, Lionsgate in Newark. So the film industry. There's a whole technology aspect to all of that.
Yeah.
Newark's becoming a pretty important hub for fintech.
Yeah.
And there's crossover there. So I think being located where we're at, you can get to Newark, Jersey City in 25, 30 minutes by public transportation, that we are going to become an important part of a statewide system of innovation. job creation, and hopefully creating a much better community. Things that will happen here, we're also building the Jack and Cheryl Morris Cancer Center at Rutgers Cancer Institute, New Jersey. That alone is an investment of almost $1 billion, and it has 40,000 square feet of life science oncology research.
Yeah.
Just for people to know that are coming to be treated, that there are people working every day, not just to treat them, but just to find the impact, the new therapy that may impact their life, is important.
Yeah.
And, I think we're impacting not just the city of New Brunswick, not just Middlesex County and the region, but, the large part of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that we kind of hit the future of it too, because like I live in Morristown, and obviously like Morristown's a place that is just
exploding,
insane. And I lived there for 4 years, and it looks nothing like basically when I first moved in there. But just kind of talking about all these things, and it's just very interesting to me to see kind of like, obviously there's a lot of stuff happening here in New Brunswick. There's a lot of stuff happening in Newark and Jersey City and all these places. And then being able to start like tying those together, like you said, kind of like feeders and different things to kind of keep good people that know how to do stuff in the state, and continue kind of advancing that innovation and all that kind of stuff. And I just think this whole project, when we first started talking about it, I think it's just so interesting and why it was a key piece of this.
And if you think about people who've been interested in, film and television, they don't have to move to LA anymore.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to do that. Folks are not going to have to move to Massachusetts anymore to be on the cutting edge. And this will make keeping people here, and attracting more talent to Central New Jersey and the state of New Jersey is a big accomplishment as we start to get to that tipping point.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, that's why I do this show. Keep people here, attract people here, and just show people like all the cool stuff that's going on in the state, which is really important. So
and as a district, we want to do things that give, look, these people work crazy hours. A lot of scientists don't show up till 11 o'clock. They're there till midnight. You've got medical students who are studying all hours of the night. We want to really create a place where people who don't normally get to talk to each other get to talk to each other.
Right.
Because who knows what comes from that type of personal interaction. People who don't really know each other, but have something in common. The Chancellor Strom at Rutgers is saying what he really likes about the fact of putting the medical school and translational research and the incubator in New Jersey Innovation Hub together is that how many students it'll be a big recruitment tool.
Yeah.
But more importantly, when they're here, for them to be able to actually see some of the research that their faculty members are doing. So to be able to just meet people who are doing research. What he really hopes is that we turn more of the MDs into MD PhDs.
Yeah.
Because folks who are MD PhDs really do end up kind of being out there on the cutting edge of services.
Yeah.
And, in a environment like New Brunswick, which has a very wide demographic, to be able to provide those services to people who normally wouldn't have the ability to get them. Many people who've got something that is tricky, they can pack up and leave and go to New York or Philadelphia or Houston for state-of-the-art care.
Yeah.
And to have that here helps a much wider swath of the people who actually live here.
Yeah.
To have the type of cancer care that we have, where people don't have to go to New York, don't have to get in the tunnel. My wife was being treated for breast cancer, and here in New Brunswick, and one day there had been an accident on Route 1, and it took us like an hour to get to New Brunswick from Princeton. And, I remember her turning as we were pulling into the valet, says, how awful it would be if this was our commute every time I came to get chemo?
Yeah, right.
So I think this is kind of vertical and horizontal impacts across all people who live in the region.
Yeah, absolutely. It covers all the big stuff. Obviously like the innovation like we were talking about, the community side, which I think is a huge part of like what really Jersey, in my travels and going all these places over the last couple of years and just kind of like hitting all the different communities and different, way people live their lives and like all that kind of stuff and just diversity of it. I think that that's super interesting. And I love that how this also kind of ties into all that as well.
And, New Jersey quite often in many ways there's, why can't we have that type of attitude?
Sure. Yeah.
I think, this is one of those breakthrough things that people throughout the state can be proud that there are things that are being talked about around the country and around the world. And it's happening in New Jersey. It's happening with New Jersey people. It's happening with New Jersey institutions. It's happening with institutions that they're familiar with. And I think this will kind of bring a sense of pride to the state as a whole because, we're making something happen here that, people are envious of.
Absolutely. So if people want to learn more about the Helix and all that kind of stuff, where should they go to do that?
I think you go to helix.com. You can go to the DevCo website. It's not helix.com. What is it?
HelixNJ.com.
HelixNJ.com.
Yeah, we'll make sure we put it right in the show notes. People just go click it.
Yeah. HelixNJ.com.
You crushed it, for the whole time. So that's totally fine.
And certainly, as I never looked at it. But look, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on X or whatever there is out there. We're sharing information about what's going on. So there's no reason for you if you're interested, to not find us.
Yeah.
And I think we're just going to keep pushing the rock up the hill.
Absolutely.
Which is kind of what we've been doing for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I've taken the next big step. And I think it's very funny because everybody's asking, what project is your favorite project or which project has had the biggest impact? And it's usually whatever we're doing that moment.
Right.
I'm not sure what we're going to do that will have the kind of impact that this will have holistically.
Sure.
But I think making this thing work really well once it's up is really going to be our next real challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. So make sure we put the helixnj.com in the show notes. People just go click that, go check out, learn more about the project and all that. And obviously the Instagram handle and all that in the show notes as well. Chris, thank you so much for doing this, taking some time out of your busy days and
appreciate it.
Sitting with us for a little bit. So this has been the Greens for the Garden State podcast. I'm Mike Ham. We were here with Chris Paladino in New Brunswick, New Jersey. This has been the Greens for the Garden State podcast powered by the New Jersey Lottery. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time.